Oh, you all got quiet. Good morning. Buenos dias. I'm looking down at my phone because this is how we operate these days, right? With social media, we get up, we grab our phones, and we just start to see who posted what, water skiing squirrels, or whatever else people are putting on social media. So thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna do a Twitter Live, I think, at some point, if that's okay with the social media crew over here. Can I get a woohoo? Yeah, that's my green light. We have to get the word out, okay? That's why I'm doing that, and that's why I'm pushing the social media aspect of this so strongly this morning. This is the new world order, right? Do we run home and turn on well, I hope you do, and watch Spectrum News 13. But the reality is that social media is how we just run our lives, with our children's teachers, with our neighbors, with our friends and family. So that's kind of like a last-minute thing that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do the live Twitter. So let me get back on track. On behalf of Spectrum News 13, thank you so much for having me. My name's Yvette Brusoil. And before I get started, typically I get up at 2 in the morning to get to work at 3 a.m. at Channel 13 because I do the morning news. But because of the summit, I got to sleep until 6. Thank you, Mayor Demings. Bless you. Being here as a minority is humbling. It's surreal. There's so many words I could say right now. I arrived in Orange County in 1981. I didn't know any English. Some of you have heard the story before. I go, here she goes again. But on days like this where I wake up and I go, okay, I'm going to meet with these folks. There's about 1,000 plus people here, by the way, breaking a record. So applause to Orange County for putting this together to make sure that people are informed. But as I woke up to get ready this morning, I'm thinking, here's little old me, Yvette Brusoil, born in Venezuela, raised in Puerto Rico, got here. I'm a product of Orange County Public Schools. Yes, right. Went to Valencia, went to UCF, graduated from UCF, home of the Knights, UCF. And it's just someone pinch me now because here we are. So what's the focus? The money in your pocket, the people who live here. How is the outlook looking ahead? The outlook, that would be looking ahead. And that's a very important part because we've gone through a very difficult patch with the economy taking a downward spiral a few years back. How are we doing right now? How does everything look in the future? And that's where we're here to focus on this Friday morning. And then here comes the weekend. So how awesome. Kudos to you, Mayor, for putting this on a Friday because everybody's excited already. It's the end of the work week, you know what I mean? And also a quick hello to the camera folks. They're all over the place. And Orange TV is here. I love me some Orange TV. We used to do a show. No, listen, they really work hard. And again, I'm not telling you what to do, Mayor, with Bones High School ROTC.
Turn. Carey, colors. Forward, march. Left, 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 right, right, left, 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 right, right, left, 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 right, right, left, left, left.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, colors. Right, face. Forward, march.
Is here. Also, Orange County District 1 Commissioner Vanderlei is here. Orange County District 3 Commissioner Victoria Siplin. All those women, right? Orange Dale McDonald is here. Town of Eatonville Mayor Eddie Cole. City of St. Cloud Mayor Nathan Blackwell. Oh, we still have a page and a half. City of St. Cloud Council Commissioner in Orlando Magic game. Chair of Seminole County, Brenda Carey. What about the Magic? They're rocking it right now, right? What? City of Winter Park Commissioner, Sarah Sprinkle. Office of U.S. Senator Rick Scott, Barry Cotton. Office of Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy, Jaleesa Harris. Office of Congresswoman Val Demings, Aaron Waldron. Office of Florida Department of Financial Services, Zane Baird. Office of State Representative Senator Victor Torres, Deborah Booth. Former State Senator Gary Siplin. I see him golfing across my house sometimes. I don't think he knows that. Yeah, he's always wearing a fancy hat. Yeah, that's you. Listen, true story. I'm going to pause for one hot second. It was cloudy one day. The wind was picking up. He's out there golfing. He doesn't know that I see him, but that's what I see from my kitchen. And he's talking to this young man. And I thought, man, this weather's getting crazy. It was his son. Fast forward, his son got a scholarship, right, in golf. We had on the news, and I said, well, there you go. It's called Daddy saying you need to keep practicing. Practice makes perfect. All right. I've been holding on to that story for a while. Careful where you golf. I may be looking at you while I do my dishes. Office of House Representative Bruce Antone. We have Carolyn Austin here. Office of Orange County Property Appraiser Rick Singh. Usha Tawari is here from his office. Consulate of Haiti, Consul General Pierre Charles. And last but certainly not least, Consulate of Mexico, Consul General Vicente Colmenares. Thank you all for being here. A round of applause. Now you can clap. Now look, yes. Rick Singh is here. Yes, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Property Appraiser. We have your name. I thought we had a representative, but thank you for being here. All right, so take a look at, we didn't print this for nothing, you guys, okay? It's color, it's very fancy. There's a hashtag, so any pictures, videos that you're taking, when you open it, boom, to the left-hand side, right underneath the statement from Mayor Demings, you're going to see that hashtag. Use it, let me say it again, use it. Hashtag OCFL Summit 19. We're going to show it to you again in just a moment. There's a fancy slide for that too. But I wanted to just go ahead and talk about it right now. The sponsors, let's talk about them. Oh, Lord, I'm on that screen. Okay, I did not know that. Oh, use any filter you can on that, by the way. I'm all about the filters. So many sponsors, there's lots of events, but please take a look at the various pieces of paper that are in front of you to see who was able to help us out today as a sponsor. We appreciate your support, that's for sure. Okay, before we begin, if you have questions for today's presenters, again, let's go back to that hashtag. Tweet your questions using the hashtag that I just pointed to in the folder here, the little flyer, the program. On the left-hand side, hashtag OCFL Summit 19. I've been using it all morning long on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and everything else. Did I use it on Snapchat? I have to look at that. But any social media, this is how we communicate. If you're wondering, well, how does everybody going to get to know about what's happening in Orange County? Let them know. Push out the information. It is up to every single one of you to be the foot soldiers of what's happening here and what the mayor's doing, and let them know with hashtag OCFL Summit 19. So ask your questions on Twitter. That's the focus right now, Twitter, during the Q&A portion. So if you have any concerns or issues, this is the time to do it via Twitter. Okay. Now I'm going to introduce someone that is quite the powerhouse. We've had him on Spectrum News 13 through the years. Because here's the deal. He knows the information, but it's also a very different story to explain it in layman's terms that people like me can understand, because when it comes to dollars and cents and projections, it can get very confusing at times. But Dr. Sean Snaith is a nationally recognized economist in the field of business and economic forecasting. I'm going to read this much, Doctor, but then I'm going to say a little something personal about you. Award-winning forecaster, researcher, and professor, he applies academic expertise to solve real-world problems. He has served as consultant for local governments and multinational corporations such as Compaq, Dell, and IBM, the big dogs, okay, powerhouses. He's frequently interviewed, it says here, in national and regional, mediums at Spectrum News 13. We have him over a lot. And it's a highly sought-after speaker for a plethora of reasons. He's been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, New York Times, The Economist, and CNNMoney.com. Has appeared on Fox Business, CNBC, Business News Network, and so many others. 30-second thing about what he did in my life, and he probably doesn't know this, but he gave a forecast on a show that we did years ago, okay? I'm going to tell you right now, about 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. And I listened to what he said, and I went, oh, my God, what is this? It was about the depreciation of our homes. The values has just gone down. So we made the very difficult decision as a family to sell our home because it was not going to appreciate. We downsized. My husband and I did it, and it felt really good and liberating. But now we needed more room, so we got a little bigger house. But it was really neat to follow the advice that he gave. And so what I'm saying is, it's not just pie charts and graphs and lasers pointing at fancy big numbers. His stuff really is real-world application. I can tell you that firsthand. So as I've lost my place here, okay, here we go. Doctor, please come to the stage. Round of applause.
I was squirming a little bit after your story about how you're spying on people on the golf course. And the fact you get up at 2 a.m., I'm like, my God, what did she see me do? But I'm glad it worked out for you, and I really don't recommend that anybody take my advice typically, but I'm glad it worked out. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks to Orange County for your support over the years of the UCF Economic Development programs, and thank you for inviting me again. I broke the lens, huh? Yeah, it happens. Yeah. You're putting on that filter, right? The real, Okay. Anyway. Boy, my train of thought's been derailed. Anyway, I'm going to start off as a bit of a scold at the beginning of my program. And, I think part of the reason is that I'm getting older. I don't know if you've noticed over the years, but if you look at the photo in the program, for example, which is actually my high school senior yearbook photo. And it's my fault. It's my fault. I back then sort of overestimated the demand for the wall. The proof is in that picture. It's in my social media feeds, the advertisements that I get. They track. They know you. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So it's a steady stream of advertisements about low T. Not that high T ever did me any favors, but low T, Viagra, reverse mortgages. I mean, that's all I see when I log on. So I am getting old. So this may sound a little curmudgeonly the first few minutes of my talk, but just bear with me. What I want to talk about is the national debt. And I'm going to sort of bookmark this section with some quotes from prolific American writers, starting off with Jay-Z and ending up with Ernest Hemingway. The national debt was in the news recently. You might have heard the national debt surpassed $22 trillion. We were chatting earlier. You start talking about trillions of dollars, it's sort of like me listening to Stephen Hawking talk about billions of light years. I mean, it's sort of hard to wrap your head around. But there's also been this talk of what's called modern monetary theory, which basically, if I could sum it up, says that deficits don't matter, that the government debt doesn't matter. The government can run up as much debt as it sees fit. And that kind of bothers me. So I want to talk about this. We've got 22 trillion problems, but Fitch ain't one yet. Now, Fitch, you might be familiar with, is one of the bond rating agencies, right? Fitch, Standard & Poor's, Moody's. And so they rate corporate bonds, sovereign bonds, and so forth. And the U.S. government continues to get AAA ratings. I mean, it is a safe haven in the midst of global storms. It's considered default risk-free. And that's true for now. But that doesn't mean that rating is always going to be there. Who do we owe that $22 trillion to? That's one place to start. Well, first of all, 73% of it is held by the public. The remainder of that debt is intergovernmental holdings. Okay, so the public, that's pension funds, everyone out there around the world that buys U.S. government debt. Intergovernment holdings, these are things like the Social Security Trust Fund, the Federal Reserve, federal pension programs, things like that. Okay, so it turns out that we owe roughly 68% of that debt to ourselves. Now, that doesn't mean that we can just get up in the morning and have sort of a Stu Smalley talk in the mirror and just forgive that debt and it all goes away because, well, we're all in this together. But the Social Security Trust Fund and the Federal Reserve, together you can see they're over $5 trillion of U.S. government bond holdings. And I point that out because that's unusual, and that situation's not going to persist. The reason Social Security has so many trillions of dollars U.S. government debt is that it has a surplus. There are still more people paying into Social Security, the baby boom generation, the majority of whom are still working, than are drawing out of Social Security. So over time, that surplus is going to go away. In fact, the projections most recently are that Social Security will run out, the trust fund will run out in 2034. Okay? So Social Security is not going to be there to buy trillions of dollars of bonds going forward. And the Fed purchased over $2 trillion of U.S. government debt during 3 rounds of quantitative easing. Hopefully they're not going to be doing that very frequently in the future. So there's a big chunk of money that was financed without any problem by these intergovernment agencies. If that funding has to now come from the public sector, then that's a different story. Social Security, Federal Reserve doesn't care about bond ratings, but the rest of the public that holds debt does. So how does this compare? People asked me back in 2010 when the Greek crisis first hit, are we the next Greece? And, my answer was no, not right now, but we're on the road to Athens if we don't make some changes, that's for sure. The level of debt really doesn't matter that much. What matters is the ability to service that debt. So, for example, Greece, at the height of their debt crisis, had a debt of $380 billion. We run that up in a quarter, right, here in the U.S. So why is it a crisis in Greece but not here in the U.S.? Well, the reason is our ability to service that debt. And so if you look at debt to GDP ratios, this is a way to get some sense of what this debt burden is relative to our ability to service it, our ability to pay that debt. And you can see these are the top countries in terms of highest levels of debt to GDP ratios. And you see we're on the list here with a number of countries that are not exactly, fiscally sound, to say the least. The one outlier there at the top you see is Japan, which has an incredibly high debt to GDP ratio. The situation there is a bit different. A good portion of that debt is held by the Bank of Japan, the central bank, and over 90% of it is held within Japan through various other holders. So it's a little bit different. But you see Greece is up there, Italy, Lebanon. I mean, we're not in the best of company in terms of our debt to GDP ratio. So at almost 107%, that's not the highest debt to GDP ratio we've ever experienced in the United States. We were at one point at 113% of GDP, but that was in the wake of World War II. So those were pretty extraordinary circumstances, and it's not clear that those circumstances are in play today. So who's responsible for this? Somebody's always got to be to blame. There's one political party or the other. Somebody's wrong. And you could see that really starting with the Reagan administration is when the run-up in debt really began. And since then, every administration has added to it. The current administration is, again, running trillion-dollar deficits, adding to that debt, and it continues to grow. But the debt matters. I'll wrap this up from a quote, as I said, from Ernest Hemingway, from the Sun Also Rises. So there were two characters in This exchange happens in chapter 13, and I like to think that was done intentionally. But Bill Gordon and Mike Campbell, and of course they're sitting in a bar drinking, as every Hemingway character does. And they're talking about the one's bankruptcy. And so Bill asks him, hey, how did you go bankrupt? And Mike responds, 2 ways. Gradually and then suddenly. We might not have a problem right now with Fitch. But that problem, when it does hit, is not going to be gradual. It's going to be sudden. And so this notion that the debt doesn't matter, I think, is a reckless one. And we do need to address it at some point. Maybe 4 years ago, about regulation. I had kind of gone on and on about regulation and why I thought regulation was one of the lots of deficit spending, zero interest rates. We just never broke out of that. And I always thought that regulation was one of the reasons that was the case. And so when I came across this paper, which is a academic paper, a scientific journal article, and this is the currency of professors. It's what back in the terrarium of academia, we spend time in our offices writing on scrolls, and we hand them back and forth to one another and pat each other on the back and say, oh, what a clever scroll you've written. But normal people like you don't ever need to see these, quite frankly. There's little value. But this was one that I came across that I started to share, and I think it's worth bringing it up again because I think what we're seeing in the economy is definitely related to this today. This paper looked at regulation and economic growth in the U.S. economy from 1949 to 2005. Okay? It's unusual in the sense that it was taking a look at the economy, not the most interesting subject matter. I understand that. It's sort of an amalgam of the most boring subjects in the world. Law, accounting, finance, economics, just rolled into this meatball of boredom. And you start to talk to people about regulation. If you're not in your job or your business impacted by regulation, people just shut down. Believe me, it happens at every party I go to. But it matters. Regulations are not implemented in a vacuum. There's a cost, and that's what these authors were looking at. The proxy that they used to measure the amount of regulation in the economy was the number of pages in the Code of Federal Regulations. So this is the great big book. Well, for those old enough to remember, it's like an encyclopedia volume, right, of regulations, multiple Encyclopedia Britannica volumes, just filled with regulations. And the numbers are probably hard to discern, but in 1949, there were less than 20,000 pages in the Code of Federal Regulations, and by the end of their sample period in 2005, there was nearly 140,000 pages. So significant growth over time in the amount of regulation in the economy. And if you look at the middle of the chart, the 1970s was a period when there was a particularly rapid acceleration of regulation in the U.S. economy. And I'll come back to that in a minute because there was a bit of a puzzle that economists struggled with in the 1970s. But what was the impact of the growth of this regulation over time? Well, the results were sort of shocking as I read this paper. Excuse me. The authors concluded that regulation had resulted in a reduction on average of 2% per year in real GDP growth. So if you're familiar with the miracle of compounding, 2% per year every year from 1949 to 2005 turns out to be a pretty big impact by the time you get to 2005. And you can see the figures on the screen. Real GDP that year was actually $15.1 trillion. But the authors estimated that if regulation had stayed at 1949 levels, real GDP in 2005 would have been almost $54 trillion. So that's a big difference. Now, they weren't advocating in the paper to roll back regulations to where they were in 1949, nor am I. Some regulations certainly make sense. But what this points out, although, rolling back regulations, I wouldn't mind my 2 teen daughters, working a couple of weeks in a coal mine to see what those trips to Sephora really take, to finance. But that's neither here nor there. When we leave this morning after today's program, we'll walk outside. We won't have to put masks on because the air is so polluted. We can be relatively sure our food and water is safe that we consume. So regulations are not inherently bad, but they don't get implemented in a vacuum. There's a cost associated with regulations, as this figure points out. And that cost has to be vetted against the benefit that the regulation provides. And so what we're seeing over the past couple years is sort of a revisitation of this regulatory structure. And I think that's one of the secret ingredients to getting this economy back and sustaining a higher rate of growth is just to look at this and say, do we need this? Are the benefits of this regulation worth the cost? And if the answer is no, then why do we keep it on the books? They also found that productivity was impacted adversely by regulatory growth. In the 1970s, as I mentioned, there was a doubling in the number of pages in the Code of Federal Regulations. And in the 1970s, there was this puzzle in economics, and it was a productivity puzzle. There was a lot of advances in the 1970s with telecommunications, computerization, and so forth. And that did not show up in the productivity data. Things that should have made American workers more productive wasn't appearing in the data. And this paper points to the fact that acceleration in regulation was behind that productivity puzzle. And I would argue, the past 15 years or so, we're seeing a similar productivity puzzle here in the U.S. I mean, we've got phones that we're tweeting out hashtag OCFL Summit 19. The more computing power, right, in our pockets, in our purses than was on the space shuttle. And yet, with all this technology, all these tools that clearly make us more productive, well, mostly, those cat videos, I think, probably are not helping, but it's not showing up in the data again. And I think, well, what have we seen over the past 14, 16 years? Well, we've seen another period where regulations were accelerating and the regulatory environment accelerated. Here's a chart of the total number of pages in the Code of Federal Regulations through 2016. And as of today, there's over 183,000 pages in that great big book of federal regulations. So it's grown and continues to grow. This is the companion publication to the Code of Federal Regulations known as the Federal Register. And this is sort of the on-deck circle for the Code of Federal Regulations. This is where proposed rules get published for public scrutiny, where new rules come out and so forth. And you can see the number of pages in that companion to the Code of Federal Regulations has also grown significantly. So, regulation matters, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Again, who can we blame? Somebody's got to be blamed here. There must be a Republican or a Democrat that's at fault. Well, here's regulations that are economically significant, which means that it has an economic cost of $100 million or more. So I guess 90 million is insignificant. But anyway, you can see across both Republican and Democratic administrations, regulation growth has thrived. So no one can claim to be the champion here. And one other stylized fact you might note by looking at that chart is that for two-term administrations, look what happens in the final year of the second term. Isn't that something? There's just a huge spike in the number of economically significant regulations being implemented. You would think they'd want to bask in the glory, right, while they're still in office, but on the way out the door. That being said, the economy is growing faster than we have seen for much of this economic recovery. The labor market is thriving. Unemployment is incredibly low, well below what I was taught coming up through the system is full employment levels of unemployment. But the unemployment rate, as I've said on many occasions, in this economic cycle is a misleading indicator of the health of the labor market. Because if you look from the peak there, you can see unemployment, which peaked at 10% nationally, and it fell pretty rapidly after hitting that peak. And so, at first blush, it's like, wow, that's good. The unemployment rate's coming down. That's a good thing. Well, the reason it was coming down was not that people who had lost their jobs were finding new ones. People who had lost their jobs gave up the hope of finding a new one. and they dropped out of the labor force. And that has the impact of pushing down the unemployment rate. And so now we have unemployment rates at below 4%. Does that mean we're at full employment? Maybe. We're certainly getting close, but the unemployment rate's not going to tell us when they're there. What we're going to see and are starting to see is faster wage and salary growth. And we are seeing the fastest wage and salary growth of the recovery to date. The recovery, which, by the way, turns 10 in June. Yeah, little fellow just grows up so quickly, doesn't it? But we're finally seeing that absent wage and salary growth. And so that's combining with a labor market where the number of jobs exceeds the number of job seekers, where the voluntary separation or the quit rate is at the highest level since the year 2000. Consumer confidence is at 17, 18-year high levels. A lot of good things are happening on the consumer side. And that really is what's driving my forecast nationally, is that consumer spending, which is 71% of our overall economy, is likely to strengthen in the next couple of years because of the convergence of all these events. Lower tax rates from the Tax Cut Jobs Act, high confidence, a red-hot labor market, and finally faster wage and salary growth, which, by the way, is growing the fastest at the lowest end of the labor market. So anyway, things are good. I'm running short on time like I always do, so let me quickly move through the Florida and regional outlook. Housing market, sales have leveled out. 12-month moving average there in red, but you can see the path that we follow through that whole housing cycle. Prices continue to rise. The pace of price appreciation is starting to slow. From several years, we had double-digit price appreciation. And so 10 years after the height of the housing bubble, we've finally gotten back to where prices were then. Is it another bubble forming? I've said it before, I'll say it again, no. The reason is on the bottom line of that table. Inventories remain low across the state. A realtor would call that a seller's market. An economics professor calls it a shortage. And in markets where there's a shortage, what happens to price? It goes up. The bigger the shortage, faster prices rise. So if you look around Florida, metros where the inventory is the most depleted are metros where housing prices are rising the fastest. One of those, of course, is the Orlando metro, where we have just 3 months of inventory available. And that means, a balanced housing market is between 6 and 9 months, most real estate economists would say. So we're well below that. And we're still playing catch-up in terms of building. Housing starts sort of plateaued for a couple of years during the recovery in Florida, even as the fundamental drivers of demand continue to strengthen. Population growth, job growth, economic growth, all the things that drive housing demand got stronger and stronger, but building didn't keep up. And so we got behind the curve. I think as we start to get more product in the pipeline, there'll be further downward pressure on the rate of price appreciation. Population growth, you put more people in a state, the state's going to grow faster. The reason the Rust Belt is rusty is people don't stay there. They either move out, populations are declining, or they're stagnating. That's not the case in Florida. We're back to the 1,000 new Floridians a day. Tributaries into this river of people, in migration domestically, which will be boosted by the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, by the way. Our tax advantage was improved by the cap on the state and local tax deduction. So more New Yorkers, more New Jerseyans are going to come to Florida because of the polar vortex, but also because of our tax system. Unemployment rate, I'm running a little low on time. Florida continues to outpace the national economy. We're projecting that to continue to be the case, whether it's in terms of output, whether it's in terms of employment. And I think these slides will be available from Orange County, so I'm going to skip through the sectors here real quickly. This is our outlook over the next several years. I think we're probably safe from recession, certainly through 2019. I think 2020 looks good. I think once you get beyond there, as I said, the recovery's old. And all recoveries lead to the next recession. Construction, financial sectors benefiting from a rollback in regulation. Sector by sector, Orlando remains a powerhouse in terms of job creation. Not only leading the state in terms of major metros, but really one of the top job producers in all of the country. Our job growth projections here are similar to the states, but stronger. We're seeing growth in similar sectors, but just at a faster rate than the state as a whole. And so Orlando continues to outpace Florida. Florida continues to outpace the national economy. We're in a pretty good spot as far as the economy is concerned and the economic outlook. But the theme of this meeting today, the summit today, is regional. And so I just wanted to say a few words about that. Political boundaries typically don't matter when it comes to economic activity, right? If you're driving by 4 and you pass from Orange County into Seminole, there's no major shift in economic activity. They matter sometimes if you're crossing an international border. You change currencies, there may be tariffs and other restrictions. But when you're talking about county lines or metro areas, and so if you look at the equivalent of GDP, almost $219 billion, which as of today would make us, the region, the 47th largest economy in the world, behind Portugal but ahead of Romania. So it is a significant amount of economic activity in the region, one that doesn't adhere strictly to those boundaries. What's good for Orange County benefits Lake County. It benefits Seminole. When good things are happening on the Space Coast, we benefit here in Orlando. And I think that regional approach, and everybody talks about partnerships, but it is unique here in our region, and it feeds in to the economic growth that all of us are enjoying today and expect to enjoy over the next couple years. I'm over time. There's a red light. I was supposed to take questions, but I need to know what to do. Question mark. What do I do? I take questions. Okay. Are they is the tweet book going to do it? What's going to happen here? I'm so confused. People just want me off the stage, right, Mayor? Oh, all right. Do you see a recession leading up to the 2020 presidential election as companies wait to see who is elected? That's a good question. That's Mark Hohenstein from Duke. 2016, right? We saw a tremendous amount of uncertainty in the lead up to that election. Now, I'd like to think that was sort of an outlier election, but maybe that's the new normal. Maybe every election is going to be 2016. God help us all. But companies did pull back. Investment spending actually contracted for 3 consecutive in 2016, and it scared me because there's never been an instant where investment spending contracted for 4 quarters in a row that there wasn't a recession. So I was getting really concerned about a recession. So hopefully we won't see that in the run-up to 2020, but it certainly is a possibility, given the political environment. I imagine it's going to be a bit of a circus. But maybe we'll be more used to the circus by then, right? And just get some popcorn and laugh at the clowns and still go on with our investments. Super awkward. Did anybody want one of my high school photos? Let's just cue that. Wrap it up. Oh, okay. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay, I should probably start talking when I get close to the mic. Wow, I was saying all that useful information. My eyes were like jumping out of my head, right? Were you nodding and going, or did you guys know all of this and you're just here for, the free coffee? No? Coffee is good, by the way. No, seriously, that's what we're here to talk about, the breakdowns. I was Instagramming and tweeting the heck out of that because it is fascinating stuff. it really gives us a taste of what to look for. And I'm no expert, but it sounds pretty good. Oh, my phone's blowing up. Here we go. Oh, okay. What's happening is lots of people in the audience are sending me comments, and it's like, hi, Teresa. Hi, everybody. They're all here. And they're doing the right thing, which is they're pushing out the information on social media. So thank you so much, Dr. Snaith, for giving. He told me when we started, he goes, it rhymes with faith, Snaith, and I still got it wrong. I want to introduce now the man of the hour, and that's Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings. There's something prepared here that someone wrote very nicely. It talks about the breakdown of who you are and why you're so freaking awesome. But I got to tell, I love telling personal stories because we all connect with people. We know what they do for a living and where they work and where the kids go to school and da-da-da. But there's those interesting, funny, different anecdotes, and that's how we connect with people. True story. I was there yesterday at the Village Square eating at the soul food place, and they have the most delicious soul food you will eat. It is not greasy. It is not. They use all kinds of things to make it healthier. So, like, how can I have soul food that's healthier? They're doing it there. If you get a chance, is the P&D soul food place, and you've got to check it out. I learned of that place because of Mayor Demings, 2008. Was reelected in 2012 and in 2016. Good morning to you, Mayor Demings. Thanks so much for having me this morning.
Let me do a couple of things before I get into my formal comments. Let me just say to all of you, you look really good this morning. I would be remiss if I did not also mention the Jones High School ROTC that was here today. I know they left, but I'm really proud of them because really everything that we do should be about the children and their children and the future of our great community here. And so together through this regional summit today, we're here to really talk about what we can do across the region to make it better for all of our children. And so let me do something else. Let me also recognize some people that I get to work with. They're part of the family now. And so I'm the only mayor in Orange County, I'm going to say, that gets to work with 6 ladies. So with the ladies, some other family members here, I call them our cousins. The constitutional officers, where are you? Would you stand again if you're one of the constitutional officers? So let me say this to all of you. Welcome and thank you for coming to the Orange County Economic Summit. We have an informative event planned for you today, and let me also say, brought back to present his economic outlook for our region. As always, he is both entertaining and insightful in his updates. He mentioned the fact that Central Florida continues to lead the way in job growth. In 2000, let me back up a little bit here. We created over 52,000 jobs in 2018, which is an increase of 4.2%. This is an incredible achievement and the result of a lot of hard work and dedication by a number of governmental, business, and community organizations focused on economic development, including the Orlando Economic Partnership. Let me say thank you to Tim Giuliani for the partnership's efforts and for collaborating with me on hosting this economic summit. I am absolutely confident that by working together, we will be able to continue attracting new businesses to the area. We are known as the #1 tourism destination in the world, but I also want Orange County to be recognized as the most desirable place to do business. My vision is for our region to become the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, envisioned by Walt Disney decades ago. We want to be the test lab for innovation and emerging technology. One way is to showcase our community to the business traveler in town for a meeting, a trade show, conference, or convention. In 2018, Orange County the Orange County Convention Center hosted 184 events with 1.4 million attendees. Wow. That had an economic impact of over $2 billion. Many of the attendees and speakers lead Fortune 500 companies and are innovators who we want to do business with. We have unlimited opportunities to sell ourselves as a business destination. I look forward to working with Mayor Dyer and our other public officials and chamber organizations to continue the high-octane growth of our community by creating a culture of innovation, collaboration, and inclusiveness. We win and grow responsibly together. For example, just a few months ago, the Healthcare Information and Management Systems Society, HIMSS, the leading organization supporting healthcare technology initiatives, chose Central Florida to host their annual conference. Representing more than 70,000 members globally, 630 corporate members, and over 450 nonprofit organizations, HIMSS is the largest conference of its kind. These are potential leads, and they are right in our backyard. The annual Lake Nona Impact Forum was held a few weeks ago and brought world-renowned thought leaders in the health and wellness field to Orlando. I had the opportunity to meet the editor-in-chief of Fortune magazine, Clifton Leaf, at the Dr. Phillips Center. He was impressed with not only the Performing Arts Center, but Lake Nona and the other community amenities. He told me he had no idea that Orlando was such a dynamic city. I also met Alice Walton, who is the heiress to the fortune of the Walmart Incorporation. She is regarded as the wealthiest woman in the world with a net worth of $45.6 billion. That's according to Forbes magazine. I say to the ladies, go girl power. $45.6 billion. My conversation with Alice Walton really centered around her love for the arts and children, and we share that in common. Now is the time to increase our efforts in leveraging our unmatched tourism, entertainment offerings, and corporate-friendly climate. Now is the time to showcase our region as a preeminent destination to establish and build business. Orange County not only provides an unparalleled quality of life, we have a robust workforce pipeline right with a world-class talent pool. In fact, we were recognized as a top destination for technology talent. This is due to the rapid growth of science, technology, engineering, and math fields. According to CBRE, the world's largest commercial real estate services and investment firm, we have seen 27% growth in tech talent over the last year. All of this puts Central Florida at or near the top in many national rankings on a consistent basis. In fact, the Milken Institute recently ranked Central Florida as the 7th best performing region in the country. We want Orange County to be known not only as the premier place to do business, but a home for the entrepreneurial spirit and a hub for innovation. That starts with invigorating a culture of top-notch customer service in our very own Orange County government operations. So from the top down, we are evaluating our policies and procedures to help optimize the development process and seek out efficiencies. We must not forget that time is money for business. Our Building Safety Division is reviewing its practices for efficiency and has converted many of our permitting processes to be online, reducing wait times in most cases for our permit turnaround times are 14 days or less. Right now, we are managing 60% of our permits online, but my goal is to have over 90% online service by October of this year. I was recently at the dedication of a new 250,000 square foot administrative building at Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin has 9,000 employees that live and work across Central Florida. They were able to build their new building in 1 year and fill it with 1,000 new employees. a 250,000 square foot building built in 1 year. That's incredible. Perhaps government can learn something from that. In Orange County, at their West Side campus, is 2.6 million square feet, larger than the convention center, and 1.5 million square feet at the East Side campus. In addition to economic contributions of direct Lockheed Martin jobs, the company has more than 1,300 suppliers in Florida and spends about $4 billion annually with companies, for a total 10-year economic impact of nearly $70 billion. $70 billion. We are grateful that today Kevin Derenkamp, the VP of General Counsel with Lockheed, could join us. Please join me in recognizing Kevin and Lockheed for all their contributions to our community. And the Mitsubishi Hitachi Power Systems is another excellent example of our region's economic influence. Mitsubishi is a global manufacturer and power generation equipment service company. I had an opportunity to tour the turbine blade manufacturing facility and support center located in Orange County. I was impressed with the enthusiasm of the workers and how many of them received their education while working at Mitsubishi. Many of their employees are UCF graduates. Some started as skilled workers who were able to become engineers thanks to the Mitsubishi tuition reimbursement program. This is the kind of career development we need, where workers have the opportunity to move up within an organization. I would like to recognize Paul Browning, who is the CEO there at Mitsubishi, and thank him for his leadership and economic impact. Now, Paul said to me earlier, he said that today is the last day of his fiscal year, and he may have to leave early because he's closing a $1 billion deal. So, Paul, run out. Close that $1 billion deal. Okay. These companies, Lockheed and Mitsubishi, continue to thrive in our community and add high-wage, high-value jobs to our local economy. They see the value of our infrastructure and skilled workforce and choose to continue investing here. We thank them and are grateful for their numerous contributions of time, talent, and community service. Orange County has a number of acclaimed higher education institutions here. It is great to have institutions like the University of Central Florida, Rollins College, Full Sail, Valencia, and I might add the FAMU College of Law in our community. We must also focus on developing a skilled labor pool that is necessary to keep pace with the myriad of infrastructure projects underway. Orlando Technical College, under the umbrella of Orange County Public Schools, is training our youth for skilled jobs for the present and future. We will look to continue to solidify our world-class modeling, simulation, and training industry. This industry cluster represents $6 billion in contracting authority and represents 30,000 jobs with an average salary of over $78,000 a year. The industry cluster located in the Central Florida Research Park is the sixth largest development of its kind in the country, with 10,000 employees. The commercialization opportunities for this technology are endless. Our goal is to help other sectors flourish, such as life sciences, artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, optics, education, and many more, through a foundational platform of research, talent, and entrepreneurship. Areas like Lake Nona's Medical City is being developed to be a living lab for innovation in healthcare. This is an example of the type of experimental prototype community I envision for our entire region. Just a couple of weeks ago, I attended an announcement in Lake Nona of an autonomous vehicle shuttle system being launched by a new Orlando-based company named Beep. Through their partnership with Navia, Beep is collaborating to bring the first autonomous shuttles to Central Florida, with service expected this spring. I would also like to recognize our host sponsor today, Advent Health. Building on their 110-year legacy as they have renewed their dedication to whole person and whole community health, with its new name, Advent Health continues to be a major driver in our community and economy, with charitable giving and economic growth. We all look forward to the major developments on the horizon for Advent Health. While we always work to recruit new companies to our community, we also focus and invest in creating an ecosystem that supports our local entrepreneurs and small business owners. It is my priority for Orange County to be innovative, collaborative, and inclusive while providing opportunities for all of our citizens to ensure we don't leave anyone behind. And finally, it is my privilege to introduce a video entitled Voices of the Region, which will tell the story of some of our great Orange County companies and organizations.
Central Florida is really the envy of the economic development community around the country. First of all, because we're involved in things like tourism and the theme parks, but also modeling and simulation, some of the amazing innovation companies that are coming out of our incubator system. But all of that starts with the visionary leadership of our community, who all come together to say innovation is good for our region.
Here at the UCF Incubator, our mission is to help young, early-stage companies be more successful, have a much greater chance of staying alive and launching them on out into the community to drive economic value here in the Metro Orlando area.
So for over 20 years, we've been around in the community, and with partners like Orange County, we've been able to help thousands of entrepreneurs in getting started, expanding their companies, and understanding how to get capital as well.
Black Business Investment Fund, or BBIF as we're called, is a 30-year-old community development financing institution. And what that means is that we are a bank that's created for the sole purpose of providing services to the underserved communities throughout the state of Florida.
If it was not for the BBIF, I would not be standing here with you today. When times were rough, it was very difficult to get a loan from the bank. R.L. Burns Inc. is a full-service general contracting service. We've been in business for 25 years. Some of our clients would be Great Orlando Aviation Authority, the City of Orlando, Orange County Government, and Orange County Public Schools. We also built some of the first affordable housing in Paramore over 12 years ago. So
a business like Mr. Burns may have very good technical skills and can go out in the marketplace and do construction projects. However, as many small businesses, they get so busy in doing that part, they don't pay a whole lot of attention to the back room. So through our technical training, we meet with the client once a month, and we keep them focused on the things that they need to do in the back room in conjunction with the things that they're doing externally for their business.
Inez Long, her vision for the BBIF and what she's done is game-changing.
At TS Skincare, we've been in business now 21 years. We offer natural treatments for acne. We actually manufacture 28 different products. I started working in the business in 2011. My mom got really ill with breast cancer, so I came home. And at that point, we had all of our books on paper. We had one computer from 1998. TS
Skincare is one of those success stories that have come to the National Entrepreneur Center to help grow their business. And so just like thousands of other businesses each year, the National Entrepreneur Center helps to connect them with resources throughout the community. They worked with the Small Business Development Center in coaching the business and how to grow. They're currently working with one of the advisory boards at the Small Business Development Center. But they've also which is the National Association of Women Business Owners, and Prospera. And so that's a case of client coming in to work with one specific agency and finding that there were lots of other resources here that could help them grow their business.
The NEC and the SBDC did such an incredible job. The website analysis that the NEC provided has really helped us identify the weaknesses. I think that's really translated into more money, more business.
While I was doing undergraduate research, I found this amazing cable-based capacitor technology, and I thought, this has a place in the world. We should start a business with it. And the professor that invented the technology felt the same way.
Capacitech is one of a number of companies in the UCF incubation program that help us fulfill one of our commitments to the university, which is to support commercialization of some amazing technologies that are developed here.
We decided, let's go ahead and commercialize this advanced technology. We got involved with the UCF I-Corps program.
That program was started by the National Science Foundation for our faculty, our staff, our students, and others from the community that want to be immersed in some training of how to really do solid market exploration.
We competed in the UCF Joust. The UCF Joust gave us $12,000 in cash, gave us a platform, an immediate win, an immediate check mark on an investor readiness level. And so it's kind of been a collaborative effort. It's not just been, Joe Sleppy sitting in an office. It's been Joe Sleppy working with UCF, working with partners like the Canvas program, the Starter Studio program, the Catalyst program, the UCF Blackstone Launchpad Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership program to help actually make this a scalable potential company.
Nebbia Technology is a software consulting company. Nebbia means fog in Italian. When I first started my company, I went to Prospera with some ideas, and I was asking them to give me some guidance on how can I start that company.
So Esteban and Nebbia Technology are a perfect example of a typical Prospera client. He had owned a business previously with some partners. It was the first time that he was going on his own. Excellent in terms of computer science, software development, which is what he does best, but was a little bit lost in terms of what legal structure was best for his business.
They gave me a grant to be able to get my logo and also legal and accounting.
We help these clients increase their likelihood of success and ensure that they have the right tools and mechanism to increase the job creation and hopefully develop more sustainable businesses in the long run.
And so in Central Florida, we have this collaboration culture, not only in the community for funding, but also in the nonprofit agencies to say, how do we build a better project that can help more people? But the results of what we do is the support that we get from Orange County government and the city of Orlando, and that's leveraged from having all of these people working together. So that's become a model that has attracted international attention and produce tangible, marketable results for our community.
All right. So at this time, I'm going to ask all of those organizations that help to provide assistance and support to our small businesses as they start up and begin to stand and be recognized at this time. If you are co-located at the NEC, Prospera, the African American Chamber, and others, if you are here today, would you just stand and be recognized? Take a bow for the service that you're doing in all of our various chambers. Thank you for what you're doing. Okay, this is the issue you have with teleprompters. So I went off script, so I think we have to catch up. Okay. All right, we can keep rolling. Keep rolling. Okay. Now, there we are. As part of our vision, I want Orange County to be a shining example of public-private partnerships with a regional flair that helps us move forward with sustainability as the anchor in that vein. I look forward to having a conversation with other leaders within our region. Here on the stage in just a few minutes, I want to thank Mayor Dyer, the late County Chair Leslie Campione, the Seminole Chair Brenda, Carey, and the Osceola Chair Cheryl Grieb for agreeing to join me today on stage for a panel discussion. We will discuss some of the challenges that come with our tremendous growth and, more importantly, the opportunities we have to make this the best place to live, raise a family, and start or grow a business. Thank you all so much.
Prompter thing is no joke, right? That happens to me here and there. But I do my own prompter, so if it screws up, it's me. Or it stopped working. P.S. Timer now is 10:22, and we're like really good on time, on schedule, right? I mean, it's like we're like NASA here at the summit. We're keeping this thing moving. Because this part's supposed to start at 10:25, so are we 3 minutes? What should we talk about? What are you guys doing this weekend? Mayor Dyer, who are you wedding? Are you wearing, like, you know, Prada? Seersucker. Usually we see a seersucker, right? Suit on him. It's not that time of year yet. We're almost getting there. Here are some of the takeaways as I bring our next guest. Some of the, you know, we call them sound bites on TV, but I love the doctor's quote, you know, a meatball of boredom. That's going to be my band if I ever create one. Meatball of boredom. None of that, sir. It's been very, very interesting to hear you talk about a plethora of things. And then, of course, hearing Mayor Demings say high-octane growth is what's happening here. Wow, that'd make a great T-shirt or a bumper sticker. Anyways, let's continue, shall we? Are you ready for our next guest, VIP? You look so young, but you're like a powerhouse. I keep looking over, I'm like, this guy really knows his stuff, because you do. Thank you, Mayor Demings, again, for having me here on behalf of Spectrum News 13, because now I got to wrap it up and keep going, because I think this is my last time speaking here this morning. I now would like to introduce to you Tim Giuliani. He's the president and CEO of the Orlando Economic Partnership. Did I just say Orlando? What? I need more coffee. Orlando. I was saying it's Puerto Rico. Orlando Economic Partnership. So Tim Giuliani, who I'm just had the pleasure of meeting for the first time today, not related because I already asked. I was told you weren't, but maybe you are to the other Giuliani. But this Tim Giuliani is advancing the pace of change and altering the perceptions of a place best known, as we've heard time and time again this morning, best known for tourism by reconceptualizing the Orlando region's economic future. He is leading, get this, a multi-year pursuit to create a new model for economic and community development that challenges the status quo and establishes a new path forward toward broad-based prosperity for all. Anything new sounds scary, but he's leading the way, and we're going to listen today. Good morning, Tim.
Not the first time I've sat through a meeting and been confused for the vision, the leadership, and just bringing people together. And look at job growth in America. Our region has led the nation in job growth for 4 years in a row. So, yeah. At some point, we're all going to have national championship trophies on our lobbies when we recognize the significance of leading the nation in job growth, because it's not just job growth in general. We're leading the country in STEM job growth. Look at the numbers that Dr. Snaith put up there. Business and professional services, construction, oftentimes leading the way, even manufacturing. We're on national charts when it comes to all sorts of job growth, which is really evident of the dynamic nature of our economy. And let me build on, so we're number one in job growth, but also just think about population growth. And so I think everyone here has their arms around the 1,500 people that are added to our population every week. And that's the 7-county region. So think about that. Think about how many people have come in since Monday into our region. And the interesting thing about this number is not just that it's 1,500 per week. it's that half are coming from an international location. So think about the internationalization of our region when you think about job growth. And that has all sorts of implications. And you could just look at the last video of slogan. But the real aspect is you only know the fifth of it. And when you look at the actual number of people that are employed, 4/5 are actually employed in all sorts of diverse industries outside of the bread and butter of tourism and hospitality. And so professional and business services have added the most jobs over the last 5 years. And I think many of us are familiar with that kind of growth. But what about people that are trying to locate a business? And as much effort as we keep putting out there, there's still the story of the person, the editor of Fortune that visits Orlando only to learn the other half. So it's that changing perceptions that we're so keen on and still out there telling the world. And so I want to transition from thinking about how we look at ourselves and how it's changing so fast, but think about how the rest of the world is seeing us. And let's be thinking about the next 11 years. So you can't fulfill any vision of being an experimental prototype of community of tomorrow if you don't understand what tomorrow looks like. And I want to focus in on 2030. And there's a report that we're going to talk about that you can find online to learn more about what Orlando might look like. And for me, so how many out in the audience have had a child already graduate from high school? Okay. How many of you out there have a child that's in school but not yet graduated from high school? Okay. All the people that just raised their hands have been told by the people that raised their hands in the beginning how fast that goes, right? And then we live it, and it really happens. And so today, my wife and I have 3 kids, and the youngest one actually turns 7 today. So she's in the 1st grade, and she is the class of 2030. So to put it in perspective, it can go in a flash. Now, we're going to talk about the future, but I want you to get the perspective. Look back over the last 10 years and think about the change that we've seen. So think about the fact that the first iPhone was released just about 10 years ago in 2007. So when we were sitting here in 2006, 2007, that technology wasn't in our hands. So think about how things have changed, and we adopted Facebook and Instagram, and then we got into Uber and Lyft, Airbnb and Venmo. I don't know how else you pay babysitters. But people have now built their whole careers around these technology platforms and the infrastructure that's needed to support them, right? That didn't exist barely 10 years ago. And think about how those advancements from a technology perspective, because I think when we think future, we just think tech, but it's everything else as well. Tech's only a piece. So think about how our lives have changed. Think about how we interact socially now. Ebeth was talking about social media all morning. Think about how it's impacted how we travel, how visitors get here, how they plan their trips, and think about all the changes that it's caused within our country. So now, with that as a point of reference, think about the next 10 years. And we know these things happen at a faster rate, right? So we're going to experience more change than we have over the last decade. And so, in fact, in just a few weeks, we're going to have the world take a look of this experimental prototype community of tomorrow when the Rise of the Rest tour comes to Orlando. And some of you have heard about that, but are really wondering why it's such a big deal and what the opportunity is. This is the opportunity to take our startups, our best ideas, the companies that can grow here into a Fortune 500 company, and let the world see them and begin to invest in them. So AOL co-founder Steve Case is bringing a number of his investors, all iconic entrepreneurs that you've heard about and read about. And they're going to kick off their annual bus tour right here in Orlando. And they're on the search for the next high-growth company. So on that day, some company in Central Florida is going to receive a $100,000 investment at least. And they're going to be exposed to the opportunities, and we'll be learning who those finalists are in just a couple days. So that just speaks to the momentum we have, that they would want to kick off their tour about Rise of the Rest here in Central Florida. And certainly when we think of that one opportunity and that glimpse of the future that will bring, we know you can't predict the future. You can plan for it, and you can try to create it. So this report is called 2030, Insights into Orlando's Future. And we have a foundation. It's the foundation for Orlando's future. So we take the opportunity to highlight, to provide insight, add foresight to the conversation around infrastructure, our economy as a whole, our future workforce. What are the needs? What should we be challenging our elected officials to be talking about? How can we help them to make decisions today? How can we help to inform businesses of the opportunities that exist here? So this report begins to paint the picture of what our region will look like in 2030. It'll be a resource for those thought-provoking conversations. And so we have a Cliff Notes version of the report broken down into a video. And before I bring up the panel, we want to show you that video now.
By the year 2030, the Orlando region will be transformed. Our growth will impact everything. Industries, infrastructure, and institutions will change. By 2030, we'll have 5.2 million residents, 20% more than today, coming from all around the globe. We're estimated to add 500,000 new jobs. That's enough employed people to fill the Amway Center 25 times. Our fastest growing industry will be home and healthcare services. We'll outpace the rest of the nation in computer systems design, air transportation, and engineering services employment growth. And by 2030, how we get to those jobs could change. At least 600,000 more cars will be on our roads. I-4 Ultimate will be complete. Sunrail will have expanded. And self-driving cars may be everywhere. Orlando could be an epicenter of autonomous vehicle technology and smart sensor tech, leading innovative companies. Rise. Many won't be able to find affordable housing. As the region grows rapidly, we need to be prepared to meet the demands. Training a workforce, employing industries that do not currently exist, supporting our entrepreneurs, and developing our own Fortune 500 company. So let's advance our region's path toward.
And Cheryl Grieb, Osceola County Commission Chairwoman. Please join me on stage.
Do we have any order?
No.
We don't have it.
No. Let's see.
You have an order?
Nope.
Where do you want?
Anywhere. So this is the living room portion of the, welcome to the Ellen show. So the first question for anyone, we could start maybe with our host, Mayor Demings. Talk about anything in the report or the data you've heard this morning that's surprising, inspiring. What really struck you in the information?
Well, when we talk about the 2030 report, we know that our region will have approximately 5.2 million people at that time. That means that we will more than double, and that will create all types of challenges and opportunities for us. We know that when we grow at a net of 1,500 people per week as a region, that creates opportunities as well. But also our tourism. We will have in 2018, I'm certain, well over 70 million visitors here to the area, and so that creates challenges for us with transportation and other things. Our airport this year had almost 48 million passengers come through it. It is projected by 2030 that number may be 57 million people. So that means that's a lot more people here, a lot of cars on our roadways, and really we want to avoid another 1,500 people. Think about that, 1,500 people per week. If that number of cars were added to our roadways, it adds to the congestion. So I know that in terms of building the infrastructure that will support that type of growth for well into the future, we need to deal with issues like a mass transit system. And I firmly believe that in order to build that system that will be a combination of commuter rail, bus transit, et cetera, it's going to require an infrastructure to support it, and it's going to cost money. I believe that as a region and certainly as a county now, Orange County is a little bit behind the 8 ball because we do not have a dedicated funding source for transportation. I believe we have to move quickly into that. Growth is good for our community and our overall economy. You've heard from Dr. Snaith now, but it will also bring along with it challenges regarding food sufficiency within our community. There will be challenges regarding things like homelessness and other social challenges that will cause our local governments to have to deal with much of that. And so I believe that if we fail to plan, then we plan to fail. So it is incumbent upon all of us across the region to work in collaboration to meet the needs of the year 2030. And so we will talk much more about that, I know, this afternoon, about some of the things that we will be doing in partnership together. Public-private partnerships is what is going to be necessary to make this affordable to all of us.
Yeah, I think there's another bumper sticker for you. That's a good one. That's I think what comes to our mind when we read it is, can you plan and decide and act faster than the pace of change? I think it's exactly what you hit on, Mayor Dyer.
So to follow up on those remarks, I'll go ahead and sign up for the dedicated funding source.
Oh, there we go.
Transportation. I think what struck me, and I'll take it in just a little different frame, but it's probably the same thing. So in the report, I actually didn't know this, but since 1950, the region has grown every year since maybe it was 1949, I guess, by 1,000 residents. And now for the next 11, 12 years, we're predicted to grow by 1,500 residents. And the thing that struck me was the in-migration part of it and the international in-migration part of it. There was a statement in the report that said we will be the most multicultural community in the country in 2030. So that's an opportunity for us, but we need to understand that and plan for that we're not going to be a homogeneous population. We're going to be a very diverse population, and Orlando already had, when I use the term Orlando, that's all 7 counties, okay? So we already have that reputation of being a community that welcomes diversity and values inclusion and equality, and I think that's one of the things that attracts a lot of people to our community, so making sure that we continue in that vein, and we're going to be forced to if we have such a multicultural community, but recognizing the different cultures and how we plan and how we deal with having so many different types of people in our community are important too. And then the other thing that struck me was the increase in manufacturing jobs, where most communities would be losing manufacturing jobs, but we're predicted to gain manufacturing jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'll jump because you brought up manufacturing, and here we have what a great example in Osceola County.
Absolutely. Right now with having Neo City, which is the home of Bridge and our 100,000 square foot clean fab, we really are looking forward to that. And I was pleasantly surprised. Well, it wasn't pleasantly surprised. It more so reinforced what we see coming to Osceola County and the region, because the type of high-tech jobs and such that will happen in the 100,000 square foot facility is one thing. Right. But it's that whole supply chain, which is then taking whatever widget you're working on, your sensor, to the point of where it's to the point of proprietary, and then taking outside mass manufacturing and distributing. And that's what we're looking at in Osceola County, to making sure that we have that land, and of course with our partners around the region, that those type of opportunities are available for us. And you touched on the in-migration from other countries, and even though I'm a realtor, that was something that and knowing that we have over 100 languages already spoken in our schools, when they talked about since 2010, 1 in every 9 people have moved here since 2010, and half of those were from out of the country. And I think that was a little bit of a surprise. But the rest of the report just reinforced what we're trying to do and trying to be those visionaries in Osceola County and build into that. And like yourself, Mayor, we are also sorely behind in the transportation area, and we are looking at a dedicated funding source come May 21st in our sales tax referendum, which is bold for us, but that's what we need to do to move our community forward, because we all know that if we don't have good transportation, we're not going to have good economic development.
Right. And speaking of transportation, opening up opportunities, let's move up the street in Lake County and talk a little bit about maybe what you were surprised, but let's also talk a little bit about the opportunities in wellness. And when we think of wellness, I think a lot of us think of Lake County.
Well, just a couple things as far as being surprised by things we read in the report. Yeah. One of the things that struck me was the age disparity. As far as 2030, they're predicting that we will have more people that are over the age of 65 than between the age of 1 to 17. So we're hitting this point where, and it explains a lot why the health services would become so important at that point in time, as they are right now, but even more so in the future. Another thing that struck me, though, as a Lake County resident, was that the population growth, our population growth, is about on par with Orange County's in 2030. And only second to Osceola, which is at, I think, 50%. Ours is almost at 30%, they're predicting. So I was kind of surprised by that, trying to figure out exactly where and how we in Lake County will be able to adapt to all of that additional growth and maintain our quality of life and our lifestyle and our kind of rural lifestyle that we're so proud of and that we love so much. So that's going to be challenging. And but as far as the question about health and wellness, that's really a big part of. I was thinking about it today. You know, we call it our brand, but it's really been what Lake County's been all about for a long time. It's a lifestyle. And now we tie that into wellness, particularly in South Lake County, where the focus has been on Wellness Way and creating this east-west connection between Highway 27 over to the 429, opening up a corridor that would allow us to put a real focus on wellness and health. And we've had the National Training Center there for a really long time, but we've got a lot of other opportunities that are coming along that are directed at health and wellness. And we've developed some sporting venues, rowing facility in Claremont, volleyball complex, sand volleyball complex in Tavares. And throughout our county, from north to south, that seems to be our primary focus, is the health and wellness and that type of a lifestyle.
Yeah. Interesting. So, Chairman Carey, share us a little bit about what might have struck you from the report.
Well, you know, I always kind of look back at how we were. I think our history can provide so much of what we need to look forward to. Yep. Having lived here 62 years, I look back 30 years in Seminole County. We were the bedroom community to Orange County and the city of Orlando. We didn't have a lot of businesses there. Heathrow was just starting up in 1985. Today, we, are a large employment center. And so as we continue to grow and develop our economy and balance it with business as well as residents, then the affordable housing starts to move further out, which creates more problems because of transportation. Used to be people traveled from Seminole County into downtown to work, and now it's from Volusia County or Lake County or Brevard County or other, from the north end. Yeah. And it's the same thing, Polk County and others, coming in to the Central Florida region. So how do we deal with that? I think we've made some great strides. I think having a Central Florida Expressway Authority instead of just one county, I think that will help us all to be able to help govern and set policies and develop roads, because we're going to have roads. And, Seminole County is very fortunate in that we passed our first penny sales tax for transportation in 1991. So we're on our third generation of having a penny for infrastructure. And it generates about $73 million a year for us, and we share a quarter of that with our schools. I know Osceola at one time did that as well. So it's been kind of interesting for somebody who's been involved. I mean, I've been in office 14 years, but I was a volunteer in the community for 20 years before that. And the conversation about dedicated funding source, penny in Orange County, I mean, the same conversations we're having today, we were having 20 and 30 years ago. So we have to figure out how we're going to move that forward, because we can't just keep talking about it. Our economy is doing great up in Seminole County. We have, a sports tourism more so than we have tourism too, but it's more in sporting. We've had great success with that. We expect to grow that. And
the move towards just take autonomous vehicles, one that I think gets a lot of the headlines. But the idea that not only are those technologies coming, but that our region's going to help to create some of that future. And so in the video, you saw Luminar Technology, which are developing the eyes for autonomous vehicles. And some of their founders were really connected to Bill Schwartz, who helped to create the laser-guided missile, which was a contract from Lockheed. So there's this deep history, to your point, of why some of these innovations are happening in Central Florida. And so not only are they going to happen, but I think some of them are going to happen here. And so, Mayor Dyer, talk a little bit about how you stay at the forefront in technology. How has that become a driver of the economy, and then how do we help to create the future from Orlando?
So one thing we do is we leverage all the industries that we already have here, because if you think about it, just about all of the industries are in the innovation area. The hospitality and tourism industry is certainly an innovation industry. Think about the various attractions that are coming online in the next couple of years. Nothing like that anywhere in the entire world. That feeds into the modeling, simulation, and training industry that the mayor was talking about, and then certainly our biosciences and digital media that'll be at the Creative Village. So you leverage that. And if you think about it, the autonomous vehicle conversation, we're one of 10 autonomous vehicles proving grounds that have been designated by the U.S. DOT. And we have, I think, a leg up on some communities. The idea is that the 10 communities will work together to help develop and test autonomous vehicles. But we were one of the innovators in GPS a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And that was because we had tourists that were getting lost all over the place and wanted to try to get them from the airport to Universal or to Disney. And I don't think anybody really remembers that part of our history. But we have a partnership that has about 30 partners related to autonomous vehicle testing and development. And one of the things about autonomous vehicles, guess what? They're easier to operate on flat, level ground and in good weather. So what do we have? We have pretty flat, level ground, and for the most part, we have good weather. So I think that we're going to have a real opportunity there. And as a community, we've gotten behind that initiative, and Lake Nona is going to be one of the first ones to have stock to actually deploy working commercial autonomous vehicles with a BEEP program that Mayor Demings was talking about. We didn't get to ride in it, but we got to see it, and it's a pretty cool thing. So when you can have demonstration stuff, and also you have 72 plus million people coming through, companies want to be able to be here and demonstrate the product they have to as many people as they can.
So you bring up a couple things. One is that Orlando in July will host an autonomous vehicle symposium. So the industry will be here, and we'll be looking at all of us. I mean, they're doing demonstrations up into the villages, and they had no success in San Francisco doing demonstrations, so they bring it to Central Florida because you can make stuff happen here. And so that's an opportunity for us. And we had a speaker come in through our Alliance for Regional Transportation a couple weeks ago, and I think a lot of people think maybe this autonomous vehicle technology takes care of the transportation challenges. And his opinion and data shows actually all the cars that are parked now get put back on the road and they can be utilized. So you actually get more cars on the road. And so, Mayor Demings, you talked a little bit about you have the growth of the convention center, the airport growth. You have all of the nodes. I think Chairman Carey pointed out the city's getting bigger. The urbanization's happening throughout Central Florida, which means more people are traveling from one place to another. And so how do you take a proactive approach to these transportation solutions? Because the technology might help, but it's not going to cure.
You know, about 2 weeks ago, the OEP hosted a transit summit forum, and Jared Walker was there, and who is a world-renowned transit consultant. And one of the things that he said that when you're growing as a community, people want freedom. They want the freedom. Then we kind of end up in urban sprawl and other things that would happen. So for me, in order for us to really solve some of the housing challenges that we have today, the reason why many of our residents of Orange County have moved out and they live in the surrounding counties is they perceive that they'll get greater. We do have this responsibility, I think, as a region to make certain that we have an efficient mass transit system, because if you're right, if every one of those individuals, because of their freedom, wanted to drive an automobile, we're going to just exacerbate the current congestion that we have as a region. So we do have to be smart about it. I think in terms of economic development, getting our workers to work at a reasonable cost, transportation becomes very important to them. What people will need to have in order to get out of their automobiles is they have to have the convenience and the frequency and the connectivity of the mode of transportation that they will select. One of the things that Jared Walker said that, you know, if you looked at the bell curve, that 80% of our population, that is the 80% that we really need to focus on in terms of trying to understand and develop a transportation model to have them appreciate. The elite, you know, if they're on the 10% of the end of the bell curve to the right, they can afford to take whatever transportation they so choose. But for most of the people who are in the middle of the bell curve, they need to have some options there. And so those options are going to have to include connectivity between some type of commuter rail, some type of bus transit and other transit options for them in order for them to realize the convenience that they're really looking for. And so it is central to us dealing with the housing crisis that we have. Just a week or so ago, there was a report that looked at the top 50 metropolitan areas in the country, and they looked at the available housing stock for the low and very low income. And on that list, you know, we didn't fare very well. We had like 13 available housing units per 100 people, and that's not where we want to be. So how we plan for our communities as we are growing to have housing that is available is something that we're going to wrestle with. We have a task force now that we put in place in Orange that is going to really help to delve into that. I go back to, I believe, the solution to coming up with a robust transportation system is going to have to involve private partners, because it's going to be expensive. And fortunately, we have the Bright Line or the Virgin trains that is now into areas of commerce, into places where people live that will connect us in order to have the type of system that we really have to have. You know, when you look at other major metropolitan areas, they have very mature mass transit systems. And so because of the migratory patterns that we're seeing as people are moving into the area, they're coming from some of these areas where they have mass transit, whether they're coming from other world-class cities from around the world, or they're coming from New York or various other places, they're used to having mass transit systems. So it is absolutely critical to, I think, our survivability and longevity of having this, what I call this high-octane economy here that is part and parcel to getting our workers to work and getting our people to be able to have the freedom to move around as they choose to move around.
And Chairman Carey, so you talked about Seminole County has invested several times with dedicated funding for transportation, and so over the last maybe decade, you've had Deloitte and Verizon and ADP, just to name a few, come into Seminole County and provide a lot more employment options locally. I think people would be interested to hear that's been a lot of success, and how do you continue to build on that going forward, because you have a lot of these pieces coming together?
Well, part of our success story, obviously, has been our partnership with the schools. We have one of the only A-rated districts in the region, 18 out of 19 years. So people have wanted to live in our county. Our forefathers spent a lot of time planning how they were going to preserve and balance the rural area with the urban area. 1/3 of our county is in a designated rural area. When you think about trails and natural lands and all the things that people want to enjoy, but they don't want to have to go very far to get to work. We have 63 miles of trails, 6,600 acres of natural lands. So I think that we were very fortunate to have, people that were thinking about all of that balance, but they really were thinking about it back then because we were the bedroom community. They didn't really know Gino Paolucci was really the visionary for building a real diverse live, work, play development, which was Heathrow, that started back in the early 80s. And in the 90s, when the economy turned down, it was called death row. For those who were in the real estate business back then, I mean, we all remember that. I was one of the original brokers out there, and it was very hard even then to visualize what he saw and how that would grow. And so today, when I drive down International Parkway and I see these, huge buildings with great jobs and employment. Just in the last 5 years, we've created about 5,000 new jobs with high-wage paying companies, which, generated another 3,000 or 4,000 in ancillary jobs. Mm-hmm. Manufacturing is something that we've focused on as well. I noticed on the chart, that was the thing at the bottom, it was a declining, but in our county, it's actually been increasing. So I think we as leaders have to look at diversifying our own area, and that helps, I think, everybody. If we create jobs in our area, they don't have to drive all the way downtown to get here. And it's just, you never know. So if you live in Seminole County, like when I came here this morning, you never know what to expect. So if I'm an employee and I'm expected to be at work at 8 o'clock, I'm having to give up some extra time because I don't know if it's going to take me an hour or 2 hours to get here. Now, this morning I was fortunate. I left at 7:15 because I wanted to be here to hear Dr. Snaith's presentation, and I was here at 8 o'clock. So, but if it would have been any other morning, it could have been 9 o'clock. So we're using a lot of people's time, and the time that they spend in their automobile, while it's more comfortable and you got a lot of different, creature features and those kind of things, it still is time away from your family, time that you could be spending with your children, time you could be sleeping in, as Wybeth said this morning. And so the planning function has got to kind of be refocused, in my opinion. In our county, we're focused on how do we redevelop along where we already have infrastructure. So redevelopment of 1792, how do you attract people to come there? So it's a balancing act, really, and I don't know. I hope we can all figure it out and hopefully get a dedicated funding source. In addition, I know some of the counties are looking at going to a penny, but we've never been able to pass as a region. And we've had this discussion, again, I'm telling you, for 30 years. I know we've been talking about a regional dedicated funding source and how do you make all those connections. And it was funny when you were talking about the autonomous vehicle. I actually was on the Metro Plan Citizens Advisory Committee 30 years ago, and I was a test driver for SunTrack and it was like a GPS on the back of a Taurus. It looked like a Dixie cup, and it would track you around, and I was one of the test drivers for that. And I remember I pulled under some trees one time over in Volusia County, and the car and I were both lost at that point. So it's kind of interesting to see how far we've come and how that technology helps us get around today. So the next 30 years, who knows what that's going to bring for us.
And you mentioned something, kind of the vision from Heathrow. You know, Mayor Demings was talking kind of Disney's vision for Epcot. You think of the vision for space. So none of these things happen in 3 years.
Right.
We all like them to, but it's just not the reality. And so thinking Osceola County, so thinking the big transformation, I think I still find people have trouble getting their arms around how big the vision really is for Bridge and Neo City and how transformational. And one thing that struck me is just when you look at Osceola County, we just had a gubernatorial election. So half the people that voted in Osceola County were not registered voters in Osceola County to vote when Rick Scott ran for the first time. Just think of how much the landscape is changing, how fast. And sometimes there's some people with a long memory and understand the history, but there's a lot of people that don't. Right. And so I think Osceola County is trying to rewrite the history and the vision. So I think help people understand more from an educational standpoint and the full transformation, the big vision here.
So if you think about Osceola County and traditionally how it's been, I mean, we're primarily tourism on the west, ag on the east. That's what we have been. And that's why we have a lot of folks that travel to Orange County and other places looking for other job opportunities, because those particular jobs, unless you're in the higher echelon, are not high-paying jobs. So that became kind of the vision for what do we need to do differently? How do we change our economy in Osceola County? And the Bridge facility, or Neo City, which is a 500-acre tract of land that the county owns, a portion of it will be for a water facility that will help clean water coming in from the north end of Lake Toho and also for reclaimed water. And then the balance will be where there'll be a little bit of a mixed use for folks that can live, work, play, which, by the way, is what Osceola County is doing now with all their developments. We've drawn an urban growth boundary and said this is where the growth will occur. Outside of that is where our rural area, because ag is still a very important aspect that we need to continue to support in Osceola County and throughout our country, quite frankly. But then having different. So having now this fab where nanotechnologies are emerging from named companies, big name companies that you're familiar with, and working with also our school system. We have STEM now in pre-K all the way up through high school. We have a relationship with Valencia where they have the advanced manufacturing facility, which is not a 4 or 8 year degree. It's where you can go in and learn how to work on these multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment and come out making $60,000 to $80,000 a year. So we're changing, again, that whole economy where now people can grow up in Osceola County, go to school in Osceola County, and work in Osceola County. And within those developments that we're also looking at approving, we have also our job centers. And so we're trying to create more of that internal capture versus going outside of the area. We're still going to have all of us, people go outside the area, but the more we can do that and the less trips generated, the better. And part of that is, too, making sure that we have affordable housing as a component of these developments. It's very difficult for those working at Disney. They're having to live so far away. You talked about that as well in Seminole. And so trying to make sure there's opportunities there, because transportation is a big part of their expenses. And the more we can cut that down and cut down the travel time so people can spend time with their families, the higher quality of life that we have.
I think it'd be almost fun to put this conversation on a timeline, and you can kind of see, Chairman Carey talking about some of the things that were done in Seminole County a couple decades ago, and now you see leaders in Osceola County coming together around a vision for a very similar model of creating a live, work, play environment.
And it's difficult because, as you said, it's hard for people to envision, because this doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a couple of years. This is a 10-year vision. A 10-year vision that can create another 80,000 jobs just because of what's happening in Neo City.
Yeah. So, I mean, the parallels here, and I know you're jumping at the bit because the Osceola experience and the Lake experience, one thing, you talk about wellness. I think people might identify that with some of the things that have already come online. whether it's the legacy of having Advent Health headquartered here in Central Florida or Lake Nona Medical City, but kind of the up-and-coming charger from Lake County is this mark on wellness and healthcare. And we saw in the video how much it's going to grow. And you're looking to kind of match that growth with the growth you're going to experience and create a lot of opportunity.
And I think people know that historically Lake County has had a lot of retirees. We've been somewhat of a retirement community, and we're abutted on the west by the villages. In fact, the villages started in Lake County, grew into Marion, and then into Sumter, and now it's growing back into Lake County. We had 6,000 new homes built in Fruitland Park last year, just in the villages, and now they're moving into Leesburg. So the health and wellness part and health sciences, our hospital system, home health, all of these things are going to be critical parts of our economy. But I did want to jump in and kind of compare how we really are in a similar situation as Osceola County, in that we are trying to create our own employment centers. And we think, regionally that helps all of us. It does help from a trip generation standpoint, too, keeping people at home. And the transportation network, the regional transportation network, is certainly helping us in that regard with the Wekiva Parkway being completed. We've got an innovation district that is planned in the Mount Dora area. We recently had the Turnpike interchange come online in Mineola. That's opened up a tremendous amount of opportunity for light industrial and manufacturing. And then with Wellness Way and the Lake Orange Connector hopefully coming on board in the future, those transportation connections to Metro Orlando are huge for us, but they allow us also to develop these employment centers that are right there in Lake County. And again, we've worked really closely with our education partners, developing an advanced manufacturing center. And manufacturing, believe it or not, is a huge part of Lake County's economy. A lot of people don't realize that, but we have a lot of niche manufacturers that are throughout our county. Yep. And we're hoping to really grow on that and expand in the area of technology. And recently I have to brag on Groveland, the city of Groveland and Lake County working together to get the Kroger Ocado distribution center that will be coming online in about a year. They're going to build the 375,000 square foot distribution center there in Groveland, right near the Turnpike. So that's exciting, and that's all about technology as well, because it's an e-commerce center that is a combination of humans and to call ourselves part of the Orlando region, and so it's exciting times.
Jim, that's kind of one of the things that's totally different than 2 decades.
High tech or whatever the case may be, accounting, whatever, and then they tend to kind of all go to that same particular area. And it is kind of interesting, though, that, again, moving freights, goods, and services, another conversation we've been having for 20 or 30 years on how do we solve that. And with the autonomous trucks going on, I was asking Mayor Dyer earlier if he had seen the new Sun Track down in Polk County that's, 440 acres that the government has bought to test autonomous vehicles, and it's actually being built now. So I flew over it the other day, and I was like, wow, you can really see it starting to take shape. And so we will, again, this region, be community leader, world leaders, really. And we are unique, I think, for other communities, because in many parts of the country, the adjacent counties are always fighting with each other, and they're always competing. And I think we learned a long time ago that just wasn't going to really be the best thing for our citizens. And and we're all kind of in this together. And the solution is not a one-stop solution. If I fixed transportation in Seminole County and they don't fix it in Orange or Volusia, we still have problems. So but the connectivity and how do we do that? And with technology, BRT, bus rapid transit, is kind of the entry level into rail. And, if it works in an area, you can put down a solid, hard corridor. If it doesn't work, you can pick it up and move it somewhere else. But how do we connect point A to B without, such a big investment? And so we have to really look at every aspect of it and all the technology and how can we use that to our benefit. And you know what? If we can be the test ground for something, they come and do it, and we don't necessarily have to pay for it. And so that's really, I think, been a great thing for Central Florida, is so many companies do want to come here and use us as a test market for whatever reason that they want to do that. I think it's helpful.
So we'll end on sort of the collaboration and innovation, and we're all in this together as the motto of the panel. So please help me in thanking our group of elected leaders.
Right.
Oh.
Thank you. Now I'll turn it back over to Mayor Demings.
All right. We've had a fantastic day. I want to make one additional recognition. We noticed that Senator Bill Nelson walked in the room. Senator Nelson, would you stand for just a moment and be recognized for the years of service? Are there any other elected officials who were not recognized earlier? Now would be the time for us to recognize you as well. So, all right. And so let me say thank you to all of our sponsors and especially